are delighted to deliver our presentation about the issue that we have identified for our assignment, and we hope that you will find our presentation interesting and knowledgeable. I am Bergen, this is Dennis, Jan, and Andrew. So Dennis will make it.
Okay, but first of all, I want to explain the full meaning of corruption. Basically, all of us know what the corruption means, but not all of us necessarily share the same idea. So for the purpose of this presentation, we chose a very clear and concise definition of corruption, which has been selected by the Transparency International, which is a global civil organization that is leading the fight against corruption. So basically, corruption can be defined as the abuse of the entrusted power to gain for the private gain. And also corruption can be divided into further categories, such as bribery, nepotism, fraud, and embezzlement. Just to very short explain what they are. A bribery means as an offer of money or any other service to influence a public official. Secondly, nepotism can be explained as a favoritism shown by the public official to any relative or to the close friend. Then fraud, it can be defined as the cheating government in any kind. And finally, embezzlement can be defined as stealing money or any other government property. So obviously, why we're talking about corruption? So let me tell you, corruption is a really big issue because it harms everyone, it affects everyone, and it harms the poor people the most. So from the political point of view, it's a great obstacle to democracy and to the rule of law. And also accountable leadership cannot be developed under the corrupt climate. And secondly, economically, corruption leads to the depletion of the national wealth, and it also stops the development of the fair market structures. And thirdly, socially, corruption has a very negative effect on the social fabric of a society. Particularly, it undermines people's trust in the political system, institutions, and leadership. And finally, from the environmental point of view, corruption has resulted into the lack of environmental regulations or further enforcements, and which has further led to the exploitation of natural resources, from minerals, timber, oil, and even animals as well.
From when we think about corruption, Russia will be one of the countries to mention, and it has the largest nation on earth in terms of surface area, it has 9 time zones, and shares borders with 40 countries, and has a coastline of 3 oceans. So it's also known, of course, for its enormous economic power due to its natural resources, above all oil and gas. And Moscow has also more than one, reminded the rest of authority that serves as the main energy supplier. And the Russian economy permits new possibilities for foreign companies and investors in 2010 and onwards. So, as we know, Russia has a powerful position in a lot of aspects, and therefore it's not surprising to see the mass of corruption thriving there. But what's the history of corruption in Russia, and how does it start? Dennis will be informing you about this.
Okay, just very quickly explain the brief history of corruption in Russia. So the purpose of this slide is just explain that the corruption is actually rooted in Russia. It's not a new concept, and it has been there, it has been occurring in Russia for centuries. For instance, it first started in ancient Russia, and even then people started to fight against it. And Ivan the Terrible has ordered to execute all the public officials who were found to accept or give bribes. And also during the Peter the Great, there were so many public officials, and therefore salaries were paid irregularly to them, and therefore they saw bribes as a second source of income. And also one of the foreigners that visited the Russia at that time commented on the public officials that they're seen as some kind of beast, some kind of metaphor. And finally, during the Catherine II, salaries were still paid as regular wages, but they were paid in the paper money, and therefore the value has, in the 19th century, the value started to depreciate against the metallic money, and it therefore has again led to the increase in corruption as well. And yeah.
According to the current situation, the size of corruption market is estimated to be close to $300 billion, and the analyzers say 80% of Russian businesses pay bribes. And currently also fines for bribery can amount to 100,000 rubles, or the defendant's income for up to 1 year. So Russia's current president, Dmitry Medvedev, is pushing for tougher measures, and in terms of the future situation, Mr. Medvedev proposed a new draft bill that requires bureaucrats to declare their own and their families' income and assets. So, however, the only way to fight corruption is through political competition and independent courts, free media, and also strong civil society.
Okay, so in terms of the specific threats and risks that your company might face as a result of corruption. So of course, if you will be having your subsidiary of the parent company in Russia, then if it will be found out, either directly or indirectly, that the company is involved in any of the corrupt activities, then it will result it will damage our public relations, and therefore it will be very difficult for us to build or maintain new business relationships in Russia and with the rest of the world as well. And secondly, weak health and safety procedures. We know that Russia is a very bureaucratic country, and surely government will send their local health and safety inspectors to undertake some health and safety audit. And assuming that we will be employing any Russian local managers in the subsidiaries, they might not be bothered too much about the details, and therefore they might bribe those inspectors in order to avoid this, and therefore health and safety will be very unstable. Secondly, low morale of the employees. Basically, it means that if the junior managers or the junior personnel will find out that senior manager is involved in corrupt practices, the job will be meaningless or purposeless for them, and therefore they will be demotivated or demoralized, and it may also result to the whistleblowing, which again will damage our public relations. Next, less market share. This basically means that our key competitors in Russia will fight for the land in order to extract oil, and they might pay higher than the actual price of the government to secure the contract. So on that basis, we might lose market share. And finally, a poor relationship with Kremlin officials. This basically, as I mentioned in the history, corruption is rooted into Russia and its culture, and therefore it's quite normal for government officials to demand bribes from the business executive. And we, being the Western company, we would explicitly refuse to pay bribes, and this therefore will damage relationships, and it will lead for the Kremlin officials to create some kind of obstacles for our business in the long term. And then, obviously, throughout this presentation, we have portrayed corruption as an evil, as a bad thing. But is it a necessary evil? So therefore, we have prepared two different ethical approaches that will make you look from two perspectives on the corruption. First one is ethics of duties. This is basically ethical absolutism. This means that corruption is morally wrong, and it does not depend upon the situation culture, so you should not do this. So that's the first ethical theory. Now the second ethical theory is utilitarianism. This is a relativist theory, which means that any moral judgment or decision is primarily based upon the culture itself. And it's also, this principle means like the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. And to give a very good example of this principle is when German intellectuals and officials attempted to assassinate Hitler in 1944. They have justified the attempt on the basis of utilitarianism because they claimed that it will result in the greatest happiness for every people. And also corruption can also be seen as an advantage. So it's not always a bad thing. For instance, if you want to get things done very quickly in terms of the paperwork or any other administrative things, corruption can speed up the process, and it will lead to the more effective business. And lastly, like it or not, but if you want to work in Russia, you will be faced with a corruption issue. So it's a normal part of everyday life in Russia. So for this reason, we have prepared a separate report, and therefore we have outlined special recommendations how to deal with this issue. So I'm afraid we're coming to the end of our presentation, and if you have any questions, then we will be very happy to answer them. Thank you.
Perfect.